And most of the teachings on the subject of divorce, they teach that Jesus came to change the law of Moses. And so in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus established changes to the law. These are the same people that also teach that Jesus fulfilled the law. So in fulfilling the law, we are no longer under the law of Moses. So why would Jesus come and change a law that we are no longer under? So let's make sense first of Jesus' statement of him fulfilling the law. Number one, the law could not make men righteous. The blood of animals did not have the ability to pay the price for sin in fullness. And so Jesus came and made the payment in full. It's a perpetual payment, meaning ongoing payment. Also, when it comes to the law, Jesus clearly stated to fulfill the law of Moses, we were to keep two commandments. That was to love God with all of our heart, mind, and soul, and also to love our neighbors as ourselves. If we keep these two laws, then we have fulfilled the law of Moses. That means all 613 laws were fulfilled by keeping these two laws. Let me say this: in addition to fulfilling the law of Moses, the law could not make men righteous, and so Jesus came, and faith was now the requirement. The scripture states that the just or the righteous shall live by faith. This was not an Old Testament requirement, but a New Testament requirement. So the life of faith, lifestyle of faith, allows us to fulfill or keep the law. The Apostle Paul made a very interesting statement in Romans chapter 3, verse 31. He said, "Well then, if we emphasize faith, does this mean that we can forget about the law? Of course not. In fact, only when we have faith do we truly fulfill the law." So we have these two parts. One is to keep the two commandments, to love God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The second requirement is that of faith. These two parts together help us understand the fullness of what Jesus came to establish. So let's go back. Did Jesus change the law of Moses? Well, often with teachings on divorce, we jump to Matthew chapter 5, verse 32, or even Matthew chapter 19, but we ignore a statement Jesus clearly made right before his statements in Matthew verse 32. At verse 17, Jesus made the statement, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." So Jesus clearly states he's not changing, doing away with the law of Moses. He then goes on to say at verse 19, "Whosoever shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." The kingdom of heaven is New Testament concept, New Testament teaching. So we are not taught to break the laws. We can't do away with the laws, but we are not under the law. Very simple concept. If you love, if you are long-suffering, joy, peace, meekness, temperance, the scripture says, against such there is no law. God's original plan for man was for us to keep our word, not to be deceitful, not to be liars. But if we give our word, make a vow, enter into a covenant, enter into a contract, if we keep our word, then we would not need our legal system. People will not have to take people to court. Things will be resolved if people would keep their word or were honest. If we could communicate and even changed our agreements and we're both satisfied, then we never take it to court being a court issue, which means we are no longer under the law. If people keep their word, then marriages would work. There would be no need for divorce. And so, in regards to Jesus changing the law, he clearly states, "I did not come to change the law." And very interesting, we then teach that Jesus changed the law in regards to divorce. When it comes to the subject of adultery, adultery was a capital punishment. That meant that anyone caught in the act of adultery would be killed. They would be stoned to death. The man and the woman, as required by law, were to be killed. But we teach that Jesus said you could get divorced for adultery. So that would mean Jesus changed the law. With us not being Jews, we do not understand the law, the culture, the time, the era. the cultural norms. And so we are not familiar with the conversation Jesus was having with people that knew the law. Once I began to understand the law, it was much clearer to me what Jesus was stating in the following passages. And so on the next video, I will explain the law of adultery and the law of an adulterous marriage, which is a law that most people are not familiar with. Thank you for joining us on today. Visit the website, thedivorcedchristian.com. All the information that I'll be sharing in these videos you can find in the book. I also go into greater detail on the podcast show. All that information is right there on the website at thedivorcedchristian.com. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, be blessed.